Well, hello and welcome to Freedom Worldwide. My name is Tom Palmer. It's my privilege to work with Atlas Network, with an awesome network of groups all around the world. So welcome to this webinar on defending liberty in Europe. We have quite a network of organizations in Europe, each in their own country and some across the continent, working on behalf of the principles of individual liberty, limited government, the rule of law, and a tolerant, pluralistic society. When we think about defending liberty, I think the title maybe sounds too defensive, because you also are achieving and accomplishing really important things along the way, very important successes that have been realized by the organizations in the network. And I'd like to start by thinking about one, which is the importance of property to liberty. And often people think today property means just your stuff, like my pen. But the older meaning of property was anything you had a human right to, your life, your liberty, and your estate, as John Locke put it, which he said, I call by the general name of property. So let's turn to a very clear example of estate, property that's been endangered in Spain. So our first participant here, Roxana Nucula, she's the president of Fundalib, the Foundation for the Advancement of Liberty here in Spain, and our host for this Europe Liberty Forum. Thank you so much. Tell us about the challenge that you've seen in Spain to property rights and what you're doing to defend the right of people to acquire and own property.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to all of you who have taken the time to come and be with us today. When we took upon us at the Foundation for the Advancement of Liberty to actually make a mark in defending property rights, at first we thought we have to promote property rights, but now we are in the situation, unfortunately, in Spain that we even have to defend property rights. So this is a very important distinction for us, because we had to step up and see that in Spain, for the past decades, there were 14, 15, even 17,000 annual property violations of illegal occupation, houses. And we have to think that in Spain, 74% of the house owners are individuals, are not big companies, are not real estate, big vulture funds, as some of the populists try to portray the real estate market. So these are real people, are especially middle and low income families who maybe inherit their great-grandfather or grandfather or parents' estate, a small apartment, and usually not some very big mansions that get to be occupied by illegal occupancy.
So just to clarify for our audience, it means you own an apartment or a home, and one day you come and find other people in your house, and you can't do anything?
Exactly. Let me, because, and I'm going to tell you why you cannot do anything right now. So we are working and helping people to do something about it. People and also the administration, because it's a thing that we have to work as a society. Simple example. We had faced in our family a similar case with the grandfather of Juan. We inherited a small apartment in Alicante area, and it was managed by his uncle. His uncle died, unfortunately, and it took us like a couple of months until we managed to go and see how the apartment and so on. And we found out it was almost been occupied illegally. The door was destroyed, but luckily, in our case, it's a happy case, because the neighbors heard about it, alerted the authorities, and they could close rapidly the door and defend our property. But there are, like I said, 14, 15, even 17,000 year cases that this doesn't happen. So you have a judicial problem, because the constitutional property rights are not considered like fundamental rights to own a property. They are relegated to further on in the Constitution, together with other very secondary rights that individuals have in Spain. So this places a very big burden on the judicial system, because judges cannot rule out very easily, like the police can go and take out the illegal occupants. And this is a very big challenge for us. So what we did at the Foundation for the Advancement of Liberty, we tried first of all to focus on the victims, on the potential victims. So we prepared like a very extensive guide, which I invite you all to download from our website. And now with AI and with Google Translator, you can all have access to, into your own language, our very easy understandable guide with chapters for how to prevent your estate from being occupied, what to do in case of illegal occupation, who to go and who to hire, and like try to defend yourself. We are seeing now like a little bit of a declining trend. This year it's been like 14,000 cases of new illegal occupation, so it's going a little bit down. We are hopeful that also our guide is helping victims and potential victims, as they already told us that and thanked us for this hard work. And we now, another step that we would like to do is to work with the official administration and the judicial system, and maybe my colleagues here could really give me very, very important advice on your experience in treating with the judicial system.
This raises such an important point that the case for limited government isn't just being against government, that we're just anti-government. It's about government doing what it's supposed to do, not doing all these other pointless things, but doing its job, protecting our lives, protecting our freedoms, and protecting what we own legitimately. And this has failed in some cases in Spain. They're not doing it. The case of the judiciary and the whole legal system is central to what you've done. Petar Ganev is our colleague, is a senior fellow, senior research fellow at the Institute of Market Economics in Bulgaria, and a seasoned veteran of this movement for liberty. Tell us about what you've done to get the judicial system to actually work to protect the citizens rather than to be an instrument of violation of their rights.
Thank you. Just three facts about Bulgaria, which points why we focused on the legal and created the legal team, which is just over here in the crowd. Bulgaria has the lowest state debt, one of the lowest with Estonia, 20-25% of GDP. We have the lowest taxes, 10% on profit, 10% on income. We have sound money with the currency board. So if you look at the freedom indicators from Fraser Institute, economic freedom, on economic terms, we are very good. We perform very good. But when it comes to legal terms, rule of law and corruption, we fail. We fail like one of the lowest scores in Europe and basically somewhere in the least free economies in the world. So that's why we focused on the legal system. Also, Bulgaria is 3 years in a severe political instability, 6 elections in 3 years, which is probably a world record. And I think it's directly related to the problems in the legal system, in the judiciary, with the state capture or forms of state capture in the judiciary. And how does it happen? Which are the two main, probably, factors when you want to capture the judiciary? The first one is the unlimited power of the general prosecutor. So Bulgaria has the Soviet-style constitution from the 90s. The general, when it comes to judiciary and the general prosecutor, he has unlimited power. He can guide the work of the other prosecutors, take their cases if needed. He can meddle with the career of judges, because the body that governs is the same for the judges and the prosecutors. So that's one. And when you capture the general prosecutor, you capture the entire judicial system. And the other thing is the various institutions that fight corruption. We created 10 years ago specialized court, specialized prosecution. Imagine corrupt politicians creating specialized prosecutors. I mean, this is a recipe for disaster, and it was a disaster. So the two successes of IME that happened in the last year during the political crisis, first, specialized courts and specialized prosecutors are out, they were closed. And the second one was the amendments in the Constitution, which took these supreme powers out of the general prosecutor. Now he can be prosecuted himself. There is a way to do that. And of course, this is just the beginning. Now you need to change the laws. Now you need to find majority in the parliament, but also for the additional steps. And a question that I want to pose and I was thinking it's a bold question and probably statement. How you succeed to change things in judicial system when the odds are against you? There is no government, no coalition, probably 20-25% of the population votes for parties that are for this change. And I think that ideas matter, and in a free society, ideas can put the boundaries where the corrupt politicians can play. In unfree societies, the corrupt politicians probably put the boundaries where the freedom can show here and there. And Bulgaria is a free society. Even with all the problems, state capture, corruption and everything, it is a free society, and that's why ideas can overcome and at least put some boundaries and fight with the essence, the state capture, but it's a politicians trying to capture different institutions. It's not a full state capture. It's never a full state capture.
It's really quite interesting in the Bulgarian case, your Institute for Market Economics, people might think, oh, you deal only with economic institutions, but you're focused on the judiciary. Because if you don't get the legal institutions right, you don't have a market economy. That's the real foundation of market economy, is the rule of law and protection of property and the right to
it
contract.
limits economic growth. We want economic growth to catch up with Western Europe. We lower the taxes, we have low debt, sound money, and the biggest structural problem and difference between Bulgaria and the freest economies in the world is the legal system and the judicial system, and that's why we need to change it.
Well, you've had successes beyond the ones you've described also in terms of improving the efficacy of the judicial system and being able to actually deliver justice to people who want to go to court to vindicate their rights. Maria, our next guest here, Marie Kapanadze from Georgia Democracy Initiative. She's a lawyer and directs a very important program there. Everything's on the table in a way in Georgia right now. The rule of law is under assault by the government. It's a state capture question. Property rights are insecure in many ways. But just the right of living in a free society, expressing your opinion now. It's been so inspiring to see hundreds of thousands of people turn out to defend the right to live in an open, free, democratic society governed by the rule of law. Tell us more about what might not be visible to people who just watch the television screen.
Good afternoon to everyone. Before going into the details about the ongoing protest, because we have an international audience, I still wanted to give a brief context about the Georgia. Georgia shares, sadly, the Soviet past, and we used to be occupied by Russia about 2 centuries. But after getting independence, we are fighting for our European future, and even until today, the vast majority of Georgian population supports our Euro and NATO integration. Around 80% are in favor of joining European Union, for example. Since 2012, we have a new government called Georgian Dream as a party, which was established by the oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili, who has a Russian ties, and is recognized as a non-formal ruler of the country. Unfortunately, during this 12 years, we have observed a drastic deterioration of civil liberties and civic space in Georgia, especially I think in the last 5 years. Unfortunately, I can already say that we already have a full state capture in terms of having any single independent and impartial state institution that we could rely on. For example, if we had at least independent Constitutional Court of Georgia, we wouldn't worry to have this law adopted, because we would have the expectation that the Constitutional Court of Georgia would abolish in one day this law, because it's so much unconstitutional, so much against the modern human rights standards that any independent or impartial court would behave in another way. But we don't have any such expectations, sadly, from the Constitutional Court of Georgia. Or if we had, for example, independent prosecutor's office, we wouldn't worry much about the peaceful protesters who are enjoying their freedom of assembly, and we would not worry that they would be prosecuted because of the act of enjoying your freedom. Instead, sadly, what we're observing right now is that all these state institutions are behaving in favor of not a state, but of the ruling party, and prosecuting peaceful demonstrators, are beating them. We have this criminal prosecution of all of them, and all the judges are fining all the protesters, even though there is no any single objective evidences against them. The only a lie from the police officers who are saying that this person did something wrong, but nothing, any video or audio or anything else that would prove the same, that the state authorities are claiming against the protesters. So I would like to describe the situation in that way to say that right now the situation is pretty much serious. I think that Georgia is under the existential crisis, and the existence of the whole civil society is at stake. I think in 1 year, when we will gather again at the Liberty Forum of the Europe, we either will celebrate together the win of and the success of the whole Georgian civil society, or vice versa. So that this year is extremely important for us, and extremely everything depends, a lot of things depends on what will happen this year, especially during the elections. So the one thing is to have this law, which of course directly poses serious risks on us, on the civil society organizations. But the next thing is to win the elections. Otherwise, the situation will get extremely difficult, and we already have seen specific examples what the government is going to do even more intense next.
This brings up, I mean, these cases so strongly some old truths that were associated with the defense of liberty. First is the importance of checks and balances, not having all the power in one set of hands, but be able to have an independent judiciary, able to check the legislative branch and so on. But then the other one that comes to mind is that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. When we look at the great advances made by free market reformers in Georgia, like Kacha Bendukidze, who passed away in 2014, a really astonishing transformation, but unfortunately much of it undone by a subsequent government. The Bulgarian case also, you've seen back and forth. So this fight for liberty is never finished. It's always something that we have to return to. I'm interested, Roxana, if you could address some of the other initiatives that you've been doing in Spain that are so impressive. And I see some of your research staff are here also. Really taking the case to the Spanish public of the benefits of liberty. So what are some of the other issues on your agenda?
Thank you, Tom. It's very important to understand that the mission and the objectives that we decided to implement in our foundation comes from our previous experience, and so also partly because two of the four founders, no, three actually of the four founders were involved once in the active politics in their countries, because I originally came from Romania, although I have been living more in Spain than in my original country. So we kind of had that insight what politicians need to receive on their table, because their attention span is very limited, and we have to catch their interest and try to focus them on the actual problem. So we thought that the best thing was to specialize ourselves in comparison with other countries, other kind of models, and see good and bad policies and direct consequences of those good or bad policies. So that, resume it briefly, have the profound research to back us up, but then go to politicians and work with them with very simple, very thin reports, very infographics, Now we are working also with the artificial intelligence and other kind of tools that we have at our hands to make it as easier for them and for their consultants to kind of grasp very, very fast how they are doing. So through our index of tax competitiveness at a regional level, a project that has been going on for the 8th year, this is going to be the 8th edition that we are going to present for the 2nd year in the Spanish Senate. They just confirmed us. We are going to have their institution to be presented. We managed to induce over this 7 years a competitivity area which before didn't exist. And this, it's not because I'm saying it, because when you looked in search Google, like in 2015, competitiveness in Spanish, it had very bad connotation. And now it has a very positive connotation, and partly it's because we did that very long-term job. And this kind of competitiveness, it's good even for politicians that we thought wouldn't, inscribe to this career of who's doing better policies. And I'm talking about left orientation or even more to right orientation. So we've been inducing like 35 policy reforms in different regions. Out of the 19 regions in Spain, 13 of those regions have undergone policy reforms following our ranking recommendations. And the same happened when we started to work 7 years ago doing the ranking between the most populated 50 cities in Spain. And we helped politicians like giving them not only the ranking, but also a roadmap, a very specific roadmap that they can easily implement irrespective of their ideological orientation. Why? Because it's working and they get addicted to the results, because in the end, they want to be elected. So this is the absolute truth.
Well, this has been quite awesome. And I should point out for all of you here in the audience and also online that you can meet Atlas Network partners like the 3 up here and so many from all around the world, from every continent, at Atlas Network's Liberty Forum in New York, Liberty Forum and Freedom Dinner. It'll be November 20 and 21 at the awesome Sheraton Times Square in awesome Manhattan. There's an early bird registration discount, so go to atlasnetwork.org/events to register, and you get to meet people who are really inspiring. Now, think about how to make things understandable for people. I was so struck, one of the things that Bulgaria got right, as you pointed out, was the tax reform. Simple, easy to understand. Not a complicated 900-page textbook, thinking of the United States, that no one can understand, but 10%, right? And it's proportional. If you make $100 and I make $50, I pay $5 and you pay $10.
Yep.
It's very simple and satisfies normal fairness criteria. Twice as much income, twice as much tax. How did you communicate that to the public and get something that other countries are so envious of, a simple, fair, low, flat tax system?
The story of the flat tax is, of course, it's long. We cannot tell the whole of it. But it's also a long-term battle. It was introduced in 2008 for the personal income. And we see in other countries that had it, they lost it in Central Eastern Europe, so in the region also. So it's also a battle to protect it, to prove why it's working. It's working for the government. We are collecting revenues from government perspective. It's working for the people and for the businesses, because it's also 10% for corporate profits. So it's a long-term battle. You need the expertise. You need the independence, you need the trust of the public. Something that IME is doing pretty well is that we stay far from politicians and the public trust and see our expertise in the things that we are saying. And recently, actually the battle turned to inequality. The biggest argument against the flat tax in Bulgaria is related to inequality, Gini coefficient and so on. And in recent 5 and more years, we try to prove that it's not the tax system, it's the social spending that is not done right. And we also had success there because we worked quite a lot with other partners, also trying to push government institutions to change the social spending, to focus the same money, the same amount of money on the most effective programs, which they did eventually, and not just to give to everybody a little bit. And the result is that for the first time in 6 years, the Gini coefficient is started to go down by 2, 3, 4 points. So we're closer to the EU average and so on. And we show that you can actually win the inequality debate without touching the tax. That's just an example of a pragmatic approach to the issue, but an important one. You cannot have high inequality for decades and protect the flat tax. Eventually, you lose it on a political grounds. So you need to have the knowledge how to fix other systems like the social spending system.
Well, let me point out for those online, you can post questions and we'll be able to get possibly to some of them. We have quite a standing room only crowd here in Madrid. But you brought up this issue of long term. This isn't just about let's do it for a year and if we fail, we get depressed and pack up our bags and do something else. This is a long-term commitment, and that strikes me in the case of Georgia as so important, that your whole society is at stake here, and people have put everything into this struggle. So we have friends, some are in the audience, who've been quite seriously beaten by the police sent by the ruling government party to beat them up and meet them at their homes and beat them when they tried to go home. And yet, this commitment, this strength of character to stand up for the freedom of your society. Why don't you tell us something else about this remarkable spirit of the Georgian people to want to be free?
Thanks for posing this question. I think here to emphasize the role of the civil society and civil society organizations, I think we put a lot of efforts in raising awareness about the importance of being a part of the European family, which in our case equals to be free, rather than, because we have these two choices actually as a country, either be with Europe, which for us means a liberal democratic society, or be with Russia, which means to be deprived from any liberty and deprive the independence as such, right? Therefore, it was, I think, one of the big strategies for the many civil society organizations, including my organization, to work very actively with the different groups, especially with the youth, and disseminate the information about the rule of law and many other democratic values that I think also plays a role in today's protests and demonstrations, that these people, and especially the young generation, understands the importance of this choice that is actually a historic choice, that we have learned that it's not a new thing for the Georgia to have this kind of struggle, but it always was part of our history to be against any autocratic or other kind of regimes that deprives us our basic freedoms and civil liberties. And therefore, having this connection with Europe, by having travels, for example, having education in many European countries or even in the USA, of course, because of this, many people are already understanding why it is so good to have to live in a free society. And we are speaking about the generation that has born after 90s. Therefore, they already were born in an independent society. And you have mentioned Kaha Bendukidze, for example, and many others who tried during that time to have much more ties with the European family and brought us a new perspective of joining either European Union or NATO.
Well, it's interesting also, you mentioned the domination that the Kremlin, the Russian dictatorship is extending, obviously Ukraine, but also reaching over to Georgia. But really a quite alarming coalition, also the Communist Party of China, which is very active now in Europe, and there are now communist Chinese police patrolling Hungarian cities with the support of the autocratic government of Hungary, the Orban government. And in Iran also, the Iranian interest in Georgia particularly. The Iranian leaders were just recently the Georgian leaders were just recently in Iran. So that the struggle is also global. It's about free societies struggling to maintain their freedom. Well, we have a little bit of time for some discussion from the audience. So if someone would like to raise a question, we have a microphone here.
Yes, and we have one question from our online audience that we'd like
Very
to begin with. Roxana, you discussed the importance of policy competition domestically. Do you have any thoughts about how that applies, especially when you're up against other countries in the policy space? How does competition realize itself, or is it important on a global level? And perhaps anyone else on the panel, once Roxana has a shot at it, could take it on.
I mean, the name of competition means that you have to pay attention to what others are doing on the same topic or on the same issue or problem, and see what they are doing good and what you are doing bad, and trying to like copy the things that work and discard the things that don't work. So I think this is a very universal principle. We can apply it in a local area, in a regional, or internationally. That's why in our case it's been very good, because with the Index of Economic Freedom for Spanish cities, we've managed to replicate our work in other countries in Latin America. And since last week, I've been informed that we inspired some of our colleagues in Italy. We are also together in Epicenter, both of our organizations, and they are going to start replicating our Index of Economic Freedom for Spanish cities for the Italian cities. So as long as you have a very, very clear methodology, and you set your objective very well defined, you can adjust on a matrix and do things for your country that others do in their country successfully. So I would encourage all of you to kind of network as much as possible among us. And Atlas Network is the best network that we go and we can find each other, in order to induce this change globally, not only on a local level. Guys, do you have some thoughts
I
on
can
the issue?
just add that it's not only important to look at the experience of other countries,
Yeah.
but also to think of issues that are outside of your country, like global or regional, like in the EU especially. And we discussed it yesterday with the global minimum tax on profits. We can keep the low tax in Bulgaria, but then something is introduced on EU level, on global level, and it's a problem. And that's why we see so many coalitions being built within the Atlas family. And I think this is very positive for all of us, because it's very hard to pay attention to the global debate, the EU debate, and then your local problems, which are a bit different, of course, than the other ones.
And Peter, I might add, you guys have a very, very important experience of, if I'm not mistaken, you before had also progressive taxation in Bulgaria. So it can be done. So we need like to share among us this kind of very successful experience of yours and replicate it all throughout the European Union, because this is one of the big debates now. Increase taxes and increment even the brackets, and be more progressive but regressive from our point of view, because this is creating more scarcity for the individuals in our countries. So I think, and I congratulate you for the work that you are doing, and I'm going to catch up with you, because we need to do the same in Spain.
This brings up one of the things that some people outside the network don't understand. The power of a network is not the case that someone is directing groups. These are all autonomous, self-governing organizations. No one gives orders to IME or to GDI or Fundalib. You do your own thing, but you can come together and learn from each other and share experiences, inspire each other with successes and with perseverance. And that really is just such a powerful element. It's not like wacko tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists see this kind of puppet masters. It's autonomous groups generating cooperation among themselves horizontally rather than having it imposed. And this also, I think, has been important in Georgia, that I know so many people have expressed their help and solidarity to you and your struggle, that you're not alone.
Yes, absolutely, and we really much appreciate this kind of support, and that we feel that the whole international society is with us. I just wanted also to mention that based on that you have discussed, today's morning session, I have heard the Polish example and how they have managed to influence on young generation, which was pretty much inspiring. I think we could take a lot of from the Polish experience and bring it to, and of course apply to the Georgian context this year.
Very good. Questions from the audience here? Let's start right here.
You know, the Russian law is really interesting because it points to civil society as being extremely important in promoting liberty. So you're defending against that, but what about taking that as an instance where you could flip the script and expand liberty by arguing for harmonizing, civil society charitable tax deduction laws across Europe and the United States to make it easier for nations, civil society organizations to support each other across borders. This would not just defend liberty, but it would provide a model to expand liberty across Europe. To put civil society organizations on a level with the government.
Let's turn to our participant then. So I think it maybe raises a little bit of worry, but when you end up with governments harmonizing their taxes, they harmonize us in a way. And there can be some dangers of having that kind of integration of global tax systems, that you lose the competitive element. What do you think about that, Roxana?
From our point of view, when you talk about harmonizing taxes, actually in the end, the experience had taught us that it's going to be more harmful for taxpayers than beneficial for taxpayers. Because if you take out of the equation the experience and the benchmarking between different kind of intents of policies, you only get one, and it's like with the communists and any other dictatorial regime. You don't have a measure to compare yourself to. So we need that comparison, and for that, harmonization is the biggest enemy. So I wouldn't suggest it because it's not practical for lowering taxation or even any other kind of policies defending liberty. It's completely against it.
Stern, we have a question right here.
I'm William Wong from Leave Spain. I have a question to Peter. It's very interesting that you just introduced that Bulgaria has 10% flat tax rate. But the question is that how to manage, because you have, suppose that for infrastructure building from the government side, and also social security, and also unemployment insurance, that how you manage all this government spending only with this 10% flat tax rate. Because we know that in Spain, there are a lot of people, they prefer progressive tax, and I think that's a crazy tax. So how Bulgaria manage the tax system and spending smartly? Thank you.
Thank you. Two things. The first one is that if everybody pays, you can pay a lower share, in this case 10%. We used to have the progressive tax, some people were paying 40%, but then others were not paying anything. There were all kinds of loopholes and everything. So if you look in Bulgaria in the last 30 years, usually income tax brings about 3% of GDP of revenues. And it is basically the same. We haven't changed that. So you can manage to have a low rate, but everybody should pay it. And then you achieve the same revenue. And of course, we have the social security on top of that. It's not just the 10%. So the biggest pressure on the working people is the social security payments. And we need to fight for reforms in the pension system, in the healthcare. That's the big topics when it comes to paying taxes in Bulgaria. So it's VAT with the biggest share of revenues, and then is the social security payments.
Well, since we're talking a little bit about money, I'd like to point out to our viewers online that a mere $25 donation to our Atlas Network will get the Freedom's Champion magazine delivered to your door by a uniformed agent of your government. It's a tremendous positive investment. So I encourage you to become part of the Atlas Network family by becoming a donor at $25 to start out. Let's conclude then thinking about how we can achieve the free society, meaning rule of law, so we're not governed by arbitrary power and violence, but by understandable, predictable law, democratic governance. The people get to have their consent and their say, but the key is limited government, that the responsibilities of government are limited. They're not unlimited, because that undoes the rule of law and then the democratic element. So what do you think? Let's start, Marie, with your situation. What would you articulate as the key way to achieve a free society and limited government?
Well, of course, first of all, we should have the government which is willing to listen to its citizens and is willing to make reforms. But at the same time, I wanted to bring here, because like Georgia, as well as many other Eastern European countries, are in a different positions than EU member countries, for example, is that that we have this international, I would say, support, but at the same time pressure as well. And I think apart from internal actions taken by us, by civil society organizations, it is also very important what is happening outside, like in Brussels or in Washington, and what they are doing in terms of helping countries like Georgia. And I wanted here to bring a little bit of criticism of having I don't know, some expectations from the government officials from many Western countries that they can make any deals with autocratic regimes, which I think does not work. We have observed these attempts for last year, for example, when the Georgian dream approached to many other European countries and US, and they had this, like, I don't know, try and attempt to achieve some agreement with the autocratic regime, which doesn't work in that sense. And therefore, one thing not should we do is to have any agreement or deals with the autocratic regimes.
Well, that's because time's up. So the takeaway
yes.
there is autocratic regimes that are not accountable are also not trustworthy.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
really one of the keys. If we have just a minute each for two of you to get, what's the key to limited government?
I think that we will never achieve it.
Well, we can get closer.
But we can get closer and we
Okay.
can work for it.
Good.
That's I mean, our goal is not to achieve it and then go to the beach and forget about it. So first, you probably should dedicate your life to it, because it's a long-term battle.
And eternal vigilance.
And also, it's, especially when you talk about justice, it's tiring. It's usually you don't open the champagne when finally something happens. You are tired and you are angry that they changed a little bit something that you wanted to be a little bit different. And that's why it's important to come here and to celebrate success.
Super.
So dedicate your life to it and celebrate success.
Roxana, last
So,
word.
yeah,
1
very
minute.
fast. For me, it's checks and balances. This is the most important part. Independence of the judiciary, which we kind of slack. And it's very important something. We have to defend liberal democracy, but we also have to be very adamant about what types of decisions must be taken by the whole society through their public representatives. Because there aren't so many that in the 21st century we actually need, like a nanny state or a nanny governor or a nanny regional president to take in our name and to decide for us.
Well, thank you. Let me add one other one, and that is the spirit of liberty in your heart, which is what our three friends here have demonstrated through their lives. And if you'd like to meet other people like them from all around the world, from every continent and culture, come to New York for the Atlas Liberty Forum and Freedom Dinner, November 20 and 21. Go to atlasnetwork.org/events and register for the early bird discount. Our time's up, so please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists.